a couple of seconds to go ahead and get started. And
okay.
We're live.
Okay, welcome everyone to the virtual world. And as you can see, we're working through some tough technical difficulties. So thank you all so much for your patience. So we'll go ahead and just move right along. I'm joined with my colleagues, Keelan Morgan, Melissa Humphreys, and Kathy Montanese from the College Board has also joined us. So again, thank you for your patience, and we'll get right along. Keelan, if you want to move.
Hold on one second. Why is the slideshow not advancing?
Great. Okay, so I wanted to point out that we have not only us in developmental education and TSI related issues, but the entire coordinating board, and also I'm sure I'm also speaking for TEA. We've been receiving a number of questions, and both agencies have been regularly updating their FAQ documents. And here you can see there are links to both the coordinating board and TEA's updates regarding COVID-19. So we certainly ask you to check those first to see if any of your questions have been answered. And again, check them regularly. I would say check them daily, because these are updated quite often. And as new information becomes available, those updates will appear then at those links. Next. So first of all, we wanted to go ahead and talk about fall 2020. And this would be for all students. Those are entering undergraduate students and also students wishing to qualify for dual credit. As you know, things are changing daily. And so we are asking if you could possibly postpone any decisions or postpone finalizing any decisions regarding fall enrollments until May 1st. And then we expect to reconvene, whether it would be through a webinar or obviously a combination of a webinar, FAQ updates, and we can also be sending out more current information as it becomes available through our .gov listserv. So again, regarding fall enrollments, we're asking if you could hold on finalizing any recommendations, if at all possible. Then May 1st, we'll come back, we'll reconvene and provide additional guidance specifically regarding fall. Next slide. So meanwhile, though, for those of you who want to go ahead and start moving before May 1st, we do have an agreement with Exemption, and we've also brought in Proctoru. These are two approved online remote proctoring services. They are ramping up right now with training, but they anticipate launch April 17th with full capacity expected by May 1st. So as I noted, they're currently hiring and training additional proctors. By the way, if you have any colleagues who are looking for a job, we would request that you directly contact Exemption and Proctoru. Just Google their website and see if they have any information, if they still might be looking for proctors. So I know they were on a massive hiring spree, so that might be an opportunity. But we are also reviewing additional online proctoring services to increase testing capacity, and also reviewing temporary possibility for the use of Zoom, Skype, WebEx for trained institutional testing proctors, potentially to proctor TSI remotely. And we just want to remind everyone that TEA has approved the proctor service fees and the TSIA testing fees to be eligible for reimbursement for independent school districts and public charter schools. Now, we want to remind everyone, though, this is in the areas of reading and math only. Kathy, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to thank you, Suzanne. the possibility of the remote, the Zoom. We've been getting a lot of questions about this. This is ready to go. We did schedule some webinars and they filled up immediately. So we are looking to schedule more. So again, appreciate your patience with that. But you look for more information to be coming about some additional webinars that would train and give you a live demo of what that could look like. Thank you, Suzanne.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, next slide. Okay, so regarding summer enrollments for undergraduates, and this is, by the way, already posted on the FAQ document. So we just wanted to reiterate that for those of you who have not seen the FAQ document. But the first thing, of course, we expect institutions to do is to verify that the student has not already met a TSI exemption. And here's a link. You can see a link on the slide to Texas Administrative Code Rule 4.54. So again, for entering non-exempt undergraduate students, these are high school complete students that are not able to test via the Examity or Proctoru option. The institution can go ahead and enroll the student directly in a co-requisite model. We recommend that co-requisite model be an NCBO because it does allow for the flexibility that as the student is engaging in the college level component and they're doing well, the faculty member can modify the mandatory developmental ed support component as demonstrated by the students' activities and the students' assessments and so forth. So we think this is a possible good option for institutions to consider. Next slide. Of course, another option would be to go ahead and use Rule 4.55A, which allows under exceptional circumstances, and I think we would all agree we are currently under exceptional circumstances. It is an exceptional circumstance provision for an individual, who has no access to TSI testing. And then in this case, an institution may permit a student to enroll in freshman level academic coursework without assessment, but shall require the student to be assessed no later than the end of the first semester of enrollment in that entry level freshman coursework. Next slide. Melissa, you want to talk about the reporting briefly?
Sure. I'll turn my camera on. We know reporting issues are not necessarily top of your list right now, but we want to make sure we are keeping track of what's going on as it happens. So we are talking right now about the easiest way to capture these new situations, such as for summer 2020, certain students being placed without any TSI information. So we're talking about ways to deal with that without putting an extra burden on reporting folks. So we will be communicating directly with the institutional reporting officials, institutional researchers, send out some memos about that as soon as we've gotten these decisions settled and put out there. So look for some information to follow from us. But all that to say, I can't answer any reporting questions today, but we are working on it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Melissa. Next slide. Okay, before we get to the questions, I did want to mention something about summer enrollments for dual credit. We are considering all the options as we speak, and we're vetting them with coordinating board leadership. And as soon as we get some directive and final approvals regarding the various options, we will definitely, first of all, post them to the FAQ document. So again, keep checking that daily, because as soon as we get those approvals, they will be posted to the FAQ document. Number one. Number two, all the participants who signed up for this webinar, we will also let you know that the decisions have been made and approved, and we'll get that information out to you via your emails that you use to register for this webinar. And number 3, we will also, of course, post it as an email blast in the listserv for TSI and developmental education updates. So those are 3 ways that as soon as we get those final directives, we'll get that information out to you as soon as possible. And again, that is for summer dual credit enrollments specifically. So one other thing I wanted to say about the 2 options for undergraduate students in the summer. We talked about the option 1 is to enroll students in co-requisites. Option 2 would be to bypass the co-requisite and enroll the student directly into the college credit course. So really, we think maybe the best way to consider it, if at all possible, is really to look at both and triage the students with as much as information that you might have available. For example, if you have high school transcripts, that would be great because you would have perhaps high school GPA. You would know something about their course taking patterns. You would know, have a good idea of their strengths. And so for those students that have showing strengths as indicated by their transcripts and maybe other information that you might have, those students you might consider enrolling directly in the college course. On the other hand, if you don't have any information available, or perhaps, for example, if you choose to use a GPA of 3.0 and the student is below whatever GPA you choose to use, then those students might be good candidates for immediate enrollment in a co-requisite model. So again, even though you have those 2 options available for you, we recommend considering both options, if at all possible, based on the information that you do have available for the student. And again, we always hear try to not have one size fits all, but some students may be good candidates for direct enrollment and other students might be good candidates for a co-requisite model. And again, as far as the direct enrollment and the exceptional circumstance, when we talk about that rule and as we see how it is written, we also understand that it is a good option for immediate enrollments, but not necessarily for enrollments that might still be a month or 2 away, simply because in the meanwhile, testing may become available. Now, as we hear more information from the governor's office, that is probably not a likelihood. And so based on what your institution determines that, based on what you're hearing from your leadership at your institution, you certainly still do have that option available to enroll students directly. So, and with regard to some questions we were getting, so starting fall 2020, and again, we're getting quite a few questions. Will institutions still need to meet the 75% requirement as set forth in statute, that House Bill 2223 requirements? And that is, we're just referring you back to slide 3, which is if you could at all possibly wait until May 1st, when we will definitely provide additional guidance at that time regarding how to address fall 2020. We also had a number of questions regarding the potential use of Blackboard Collaborative for online test proctoring. And unfortunately, that is not a possibility because the platform in which TSIA is housed does have a 2-step security login requirement, and so it will not interface with Blackboard Collaborative. And again, we got a lot of questions regarding no access to the TSIA. If Exempity is not an option for you or for your student, again, then at least right now, waiting till April 17th, when we expect both Exempity and ProctorU to go live. Certainly consider using those options and work with your school districts and charter schools to communicate whatever online proctoring options work well for you. We understand for many institutions you have already been using Exempity. So this is nothing new for you. For other institutions, using Examity and ProctorU might be a new option for you. And so again, based on your institutional capacities, we just highly recommend that you communicate with your school districts and charter schools that you work with regard to summer testing and summer dual credit options. And again, one other point about the dual credit enrollments in the summer. Certainly, if there is a TSIA test result and the student has met the benchmark, then absolutely, just as always, students would be eligible to enroll in any college level course because they then have met one of the provisions as outlined in Rule 4.85. We've gotten quite a few questions about meningitis shots, and we're going to have to refer you to the coordinating board FAQ document with regard to any decisions with respect to the meningitis shots. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, with regard to Rule 4.55, so this is the rule that under exceptional circumstance would allow an underprepared, non-exempt student to be enrolled directly in the college level course. But it says once, obviously once testing is available, students will need to test and at the latest prior to the end of the semester. So what tests are available? Well, the tests that are currently available, that would be the TSIA, the SAT, or the ACT. We've had a lot of questions about TSIA 2. The original launch date, as you know, was August 31st. Because of our current situation, we've had to move that up to September 28th, bump it up a month, or back a month, I should say. And that's where we're anticipating as of right now. But of course, the caveat is, like everything else, this is subject to change if the situation warrants that we would not be able to be ready by September 28th. Keelan, is there anything else that you wanted to address?
No, Suzanne, hopefully everybody can hear me. I don't think I have myself muted, but the only thing I could share with the field as of now is understand that we're in very uncharted times. We understand that institutions of higher education particularly are trying to keep their traditional registration timelines. As such, I've sat in the seat where you are, particularly as it relates to relying on TSIA scores to make those very important decisions in student placement. However, just as Suzanne said, we're just asking that you bear with us. We understand that there's a big pool for information and solutions, but unfortunately right now we are awaiting those decisions to be made up our chain of command, particularly with our Commissioner of Higher Education. So there are a number of questions that are coming in to me via the chat, and I'm going to do my best to capture them. I have your names associated with the questions, and if indeed I'll follow up, I'll get with Suzanne. We'll go through the chat. If there's something that hasn't been addressed in the context of the webinar thus far, we'll be sure to do our best to follow up with you. Or in the next slide, definitely our contact information is there. If you have specifically a reporting question, definitely you can email our colleague, Dr. Melissa Humphreys. And then if you have a question specifically regarding the use of THECB rule 4.55 or TAC rule 4.55, anything that's been discussed in the webinar, definitely feel free to email Suzanne or myself. And again, we'll do our best to get back with you. And I see there's a, I'm getting back to, and I think, I'm not sure it was a reference to slide 12. There's not a slide, unless I'm missing something. Maybe that's the slide that was being referenced. Could I re-show again? Okay, there we go. All right. So hopefully And Suzanne, real quick, we can have a conversation about some of the questions coming in via the chat, and that'll actually work really good. There's a question that comes in that says, I'm a bit confused since students who are liable in all areas will not be able to enroll in anything. Please clarify, I can enroll students in courses they are liable in as long as they test when TSIA is available.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding that students have to be met in all 3 subject areas in order to enroll in any college level course or in order to be eligible. And that is absolutely not the case. TSI is determined by subject area. And in fact, when you're working with your students, we highly recommend considering testing students on only one area at a time. And for example, especially for 9th and 10th graders, starting with the reading test first. And if the student meets the benchmark on the reading, then a number of courses are already open up to that student, including government, history, psychology, sociology, are some typical examples. Of course, we need you to get with your institution of higher ed, and they can tell you exactly which courses the student would be eligible for with a TSI Met status in reading. For some of the older students, perhaps limiting to 2 areas like reading and writing, and that would make the student obviously eligible for the English courses at most institutions. And then, of course, math is another option, especially for those students who may have already gotten some of those other dual credit courses under their belt, and now they may be ready for math. And one other consideration is there are a number of courses at each institution that have no TSI liability. Again, we need you to get with those institutions that you work with, and they can specifically outline which courses those are that have no TSI liability. Students would be able to enroll in those courses immediately without any other testing or without any other eligibility requirements that they would need to meet. So again, those differ by institution. So we recommend getting together with your partners over at your institution that you work with, and they can let you know exactly which courses those are that require no TSI Met status or college readiness standard status. Those are called courses that have no TSI liability.
And then Suzanne, just as a follow-up to kind of like what you shared, so let's just say if we have, or actually there are a number of questions that came in regarding dual credit, but just to reiterate, Suzanne did share that we'll be providing more guidance on that once decisions are made, definitely at our leadership levels. Correct, Suzanne?
Yes, yes, Keelan. We are looking at every possible option right now, and we're working very closely with leadership. We're making recommendations. They're considering everything. Of course, we're trying to always keep in mind the best interest of the student, but at the same time, we understand there are a lot of issues that institutions are already dealing with. So we're vetting those right now, and as soon as the directives and decisions are made, again, they will be posted first to the FAQ document. So again, check those daily, check those multiple times within a day. So the FAQ document of the coordinating board would be the first place. Again, we will also be getting information out to all those folks who registered for this webinar. And thirdly, of course, we'll also get an email blast out to the .gov listserv as soon as those determinations have been approved and finalized regarding dual credit students.
So Suzanne, just to be clear, everything that has been stated in the webinar thus far are for the recommendations that have been made are for high school complete students that'll be entering institutions of higher education as first-time and college students or returning students if they're coming into the higher ed pipeline, not for dual credit students, correct?
Correct, yes. Of course, we also, those students right now may be seniors but are getting ready to graduate. So also for those students who are seniors now, getting ready to graduate, and then would like to enroll this summer or in fall. This is also what we've shared is also applicable to that group of students. And of course, again, just to reiterate, for any group of students, whether dual credit, whether entering undergrads, that Examity or Proctoru option is still available as a way to get access to TSI testing. And remember, those students would be able to test from their home computers or other appropriate online setting. There's a couple of other parameters, but again, if you're a student that you're looking to place, regardless of their status, whether they're dual credit or undergraduate, this is also certainly an option available for your institutions to consider.
All right. And actually, a question came in from one of our esteemed partners over at TEA, Stacey Avery, and she said that they're seeing community colleges asking high schools to help them develop equal exam scores from English 2 and Algebra 1. And I'm guessing that that's referencing the use of multiple measures or them trying to develop a protocol for the use of multiple measures for whatever data pieces they have available to them. Can you give any insight on that? Or what should we recommend the response for? Should community colleges be doing that? And then what's our guidance on that?
Okay, so again, just to clarify, Keelan, you're talking about for dual credit eligibility, correct?
In this particular case, I would say let's address it twofold. If we address it from the dual credit perspective, what would your guidance be? And then for that student that's transitioning out of high school into the higher ed institution, what would your guidance be as a true high school complete student?
Sure. So first of all, as a dual credit student, again, I'm going to have to repeat, we are vetting everything with leadership, and once leadership, once those various options are vetted, and once leadership has decided on which directives to go with, we will definitely share that with the field and post it to the FAQ document the moment they become approved. So unfortunately, I can't give you any other yay or nay guidance on that perspective. Again, we're awaiting the final decisions from leadership. Now, with regard to undergraduate students, or again, those students are seniors now and anticipate or would like to enroll in higher ed once they graduate, then again, we're saying we have the option. First of all, if the student has not yet met, obviously we're talking about the non-exempt students, so the student who has not yet demonstrated college readiness, then of course, it would be the two options, either enrolling them directly in the co-requisite model or enrolling them directly in the college course without any sort of support. And then in order to determine which option may be best for that student, you certainly can use whatever information that you have, including test scores, including EOC performance, including GPA, high school GPA, whatever information that you think at your institution would be appropriate to consider for determining whether a co-requisite placement into a co-requisite might be the option that is best for that student, or placement directly into the college course might be the best option for the student. Again, with the caveat that the student had no access to testing, to TSIA testing at this time.
All right, Suzanne, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, but just to double back to it, there's a note in here. So can we consider, for those that have their own trained and certified TSI proctors and reporters through the platform, can we move forward with Zoom, WebEx, or Skype for proctoring the TSIA versus waiting on Proctoru and Examity?
Kathy, are you still online?
I am, yes.
Okay, you want to go ahead and address that?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, the answer is yes, that's ready to go. We have the instructions and the supporting documents. We are offering webinars to show you a demo, but many folks have just figured it out on their own, which is great. But yeah, I can send those out to anyone who would like those.
Okay, and Kathy, are you going to make that available to the test administrators?
Yes. Should we post it somewhere, or do you want me just to?
Yeah, I think the best way, because it's the test administrators who are going to have to manage that process. So yes, please, Kathy, if you can go ahead and post it to the TSIA test administrators. So all folks who are on this webinar still hanging in there, let your test administrators know to be on the lookout for that communication from the College Board, and that will give instructions for the institutions of higher ed for their trained test proctors to be able to use Zoom and other services similar to go ahead and start remote proctoring right now and not even waiting until April 17th.
And just a note on that, when we say TSI trained proctors, to those that are listening, we're referring specifically to those who have completed the necessary training by the College Board and are certified to administer the TSIA, not necessarily just anybody on your campus, inclusive of faculty and staff that might be able to proctor a course level exam via these modalities for students.
Thank you, Keelan, for that point. Any other questions?
I was going through just making sure I got sidetracked. I was getting like 5 emails and I wasn't scrolling through the chat. And I believe it seems like, because I was answering questions live in the chat before we started to converse about those questions that had been submitted, but thinking it seems like we've addressed just about everything. But in regards to, there were a number of questions that came in regarding the Exempity and Proctoru charges for using those services to administer the TSIA. Kathy, will it still be $25? I know last that we heard Exempity, particularly for this particular time that we're dealing with, came down to $20, but is there any update from your end on what Proctoru might charge if they come online?
Yes, we do know Proctoru is going to be $20 as well. They will be the same, and then so just choose whichever one.
So Exempity is $20, not $25.
So during this time, they've lowered it to 20. You are correct.
Thank you.
And then Kathy, another question for you. For Exempity, Proctoru options, will we be using vouchers for TSI administration?
Yes, that is correct. You will use a different type of voucher that is called the remote voucher. And we do have, with those resource documents, we have a document that walks you through step by step if they're not familiar with vouchers, or they can reach out to us and we're happy to help.
And Kathy, when you talked with me about this earlier today, you mentioned it's a very simple, 30-second process to create a voucher. And the vouchers can also be created individually for each student or also for a group of students in a batch setting, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great.
All right, a few more questions regarding the use of, and we've addressed it, but I just want to make sure, I don't think we can reiterate this enough with the mixed crowd that we have, Suzanne, and we still have almost 800 with us. Has the PSAT been considered for qualifying students for dual credit courses? And then more specifically, a question that was posed as well, can we use the PSAT, the 8-9, the 8th and 9th grade version as a TSI exemption for dual credit for enrollment for summer and or fall?
So again, unfortunately, I can't give you an answer yet. As I mentioned, we are still vetting any sort of guidance with regard to, specifically with regard to dual credit students. And as soon as we get those directives, we will post them and we will let everyone know. Again, as I said before, just continuously check the FAQ document as much as you can, at least daily, or maybe if you can, and very regularly updated. So again, as soon as something is definitive and the directive is approved regarding dual credit options, we will definitely make those available.
Kathy, there was a question. How do you get a Proctoru account?
So you don't need a Proctoru account or an Examity account. We've integrated them into the system or into the platform, excuse me. So they will just be available where you go to create a voucher. Okay. No work has to be done for an institution.
Great to hear. Oh, and let me just do a caveat to the PSAT question. As you all know, already existing in current rule 4.85, the PSAT MNSQT version is definitely still an option for anyone who meets the benchmarks as set forth in the rule in terms of dual credit eligibility.
All right. While we're on a virtual proctoring, can K-12 TSI testing sites also remote proctor? Yes, absolutely. As long as it is obviously a testing site that has been approved by College Board, and as long as the proctors have gone through the appropriate training that Keelan was mentioned. You cut out on me, Suzanne. K-12 can also. Okay, so let me just repeat. The answer is yes, as long as obviously the district is an approved testing site, and also that the proctors have gone through the appropriate training that Keelan just mentioned a couple of minutes ago. Yes, independent school districts can also use the remote proctoring services. And again, let me just reiterate just a couple of other recommendations. If it's all possible, first of all, consider enrolling your students in non-TSI liable courses. And then secondly, if proctoring is the route that you would like to go with your student, then consider testing only one subject area at a time. Because again, we're talking about possibly short-term enrollments here. In other words, we're not talking about eligibility, because we can always add those additional tests later on, especially once we, have the full testing center capacities open again. But meanwhile, if you could possibly consider one area, starting with one area, and especially the 9th and 10th graders, maybe in the area of reading first, and then adding math as it becomes appropriate, especially as the students have been exposed to the content via their high school classes. And just to reiterate again, TEA in terms of eligible for test fee and TSIA reimbursement, so test fee and proctoring reimbursements are limited to the areas of reading and math only. All right, Suzanne, here's an interesting scenario in regards to Rule 4.55. And it's quoted in terms of requiring the student to be assessed by the end of the semester. And the specific question is, if we're enrolling students in the co-requisite model and they make a passing grade in the Dev Ed and or college level course, why would we need to assess the student by the end of the term? The student would then be TSI complete based on coursework. Why would we need to assess the student? Wouldn't we need to only assess the ones who failed or withdrew? What do we do if the student is assessed later and scores into ABE? Okay, so let me just clarify. 4.55 allows you to bypass testing altogether because the test is not available or the student is not available to take the test or doesn't have access to the test, I should say. So 4.55, again, you bypass testing altogether. You enroll the student not in a co-requisite, but directly into the college level course. So if the student, if testing doesn't become available again until the student has completed the course and the student successfully completed the course, at that point, the student is considered college ready.
So you're right, the student would not need to go back and test again, or to test, because that student has already demonstrated college readiness via successful completion of the college level course. Where it gets a little bit sticky is if that testing either becomes available, or if the student goes and tests on the TSIA while the course is still in progress, and the student doesn't meet the college readiness benchmark, then institutions will need to consider what options might be available, because at that point, it is now verified that the student is not college ready, yet the student is enrolled in a college level course without any support. So at that point, we recommend that institutions have tutoring, supplemental instruction, and other supports that they already have in place to be available to the student. And another thing, if the student actually is doing well in that college level course, and they're getting an A or B, or doing really well, then again, any sort of intervention can certainly take that into consideration. If the student, on the other hand, is doing poorly in the class at that point, then of course we would recommend that that intervention be much more robust. Because again, we don't want that student, to potentially be able to pass the course had they been given the additional support.
And Suzanne, just a quick, or probably Suzanne and Kathy, a quick follow-up, particularly from one of our ISD partners. If our high school is a test site and we are certified trained TSI Proctor, can we use Zoom or Skype to test our dual credit students between now and May 1st, or is this option only for institutions of higher education?
At this time, the option is available only for institutions of higher ed with regard specifically to the Zoom or the WebEx option, but certainly the Examity and Proctoru option is available. And again, you don't need to sign up with those companies, as Kathy just mentioned. And again, TEA has agreed to cover those proctoring fees. So at this point, we are going to focus on the institution of higher ed with regard to those particular proctoring options. But again, as I mentioned, we are still vetting any sort of options for dual credit students specifically. So that may change once we get those directives finalized.
Yes, and I think I might have gotten ahead of myself, Suzanne, when we talked about dual credit. So essentially we've no guidance at this point until we get those further recommendations from the commissioner, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Except that, like we mentioned before, the online proctoring options certainly are available to any student.
All right. So as it relates to summer enrollments, is there any current guidance from the THECB regarding dual credit for summer?
Again, any sort of recommendations regarding dual credit, other than Examity or other than what's already an existing rule 4.85, as soon as those directives are approved, we will get that information out to the field.
Gotcha. And just as a point of clarification, Suzanne, I misstepped in my chat with the participants, where one of our recommendations awaiting approval, in my haste, I responded, and I responded to that, and that was regards to the potentiality or the potential of dual credit students being allowed to enroll in co-requisite models just for the summer. And if so, what might that look like for the institution? So note to the field, if you are referencing that in the chat, disregard that. As of now, nothing is official in terms of guidance regarding dual credit and summer or fall enrollments.
Okay, and thank you, Keelan, for that. We just got an email from Stacey Avery at TEA, and she would really like for me to clarify a very important point. It says, please clarify that TEA pays for House Bill 3 reimbursement for eligible spring, junior year, or senior year. Okay, so again, for eligible students in the spring junior year or senior year. So those, the TSIA reimbursements would not be via House Bill 3 would not be available for freshmen and sophomores. So thank you, Stacy. If you have any specific questions regarding this last comment, we highly recommend that you review TEA's FAQ and also contact TEA, and they can be more specific regarding exactly the reimbursement criteria. Again, as Stacy mentioned again, as we've said several times throughout this webinar, for reading, for the areas of reading and math only.
Yes, and Kathy, there are a number of questions that came in terms of, hey, how can we get trained as proctors? And I'll take a stab at it just in terms of you'll need to contact your testing center, and whoever is your testing center administrator or the institutional administrator deemed by your institution for the TSIA platform, that will be the person that will create additional logins and set those up and make sure that they go through the necessary training. We do not handle that at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. That's handled or necessarily by the College Board directly in terms of determining who those individuals are. It's determined by those individuals with the necessary access rights as an institutional administrator on your respective campuses with their testing accounts.
In a nutshell, contact your testing administrator at your district, and they will be able to give you further guidance on that.
All right, and that seems, I just scrolled all the way back up through our questions, and at least from my first glance, many of the things that were discussed in the context of the PowerPoint, and then those things that were discussed in the context of our discussion have been addressed. And again, I will be going back through the chat, and if there's anything that I see repeating overwhelmingly that I feel we have not addressed accordingly, we'll make sure that we get that information out as well. And being respectful of time, unfortunately, we did start a little bit late, but definitely that concludes all that I had for the question and answer portion. Suzanne, did you have any closing, or before I go to you, Suzanne, I'll yield to Kathy. Kathy, did you have any closing remarks?
I did not. Just thank you everyone for your patience with me. I know several of you have emailed me and it's taking me definitely longer to get back to you all, so I appreciate your patience, but I will get back to everyone. Thank you.
Kathy, I just want to mention real quick also, unfortunately, you have had to cancel the training for the proctors at this time, but that you're certainly looking at other options that might be available, including online options for ramping up the trainings again. So as soon as you get those other options finalized, I'm sure you'll definitely be sending those out as well, correct?
Absolutely. And you're talking about for TSIA 2, right, Suzanne? Is that the training you were referring to?
Yes, or any of the proctor training.
Yes, you are correct. Yes, we are definitely looking at that. And the specific trainings for the during this time, those situations, those we are adding more, because I've gotten several emails just in the last few minutes that the sessions are full. So we are adding more sessions, and we're going to record it this evening. So we will have a link as well that we'll be able to send out, and you can watch it at your own convenience.
Wonderful. Melissa, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Nope. Okay, for being so patient.
Yes, thank you again, everyone. Okay, so we'll go ahead and end the webinar for today. And again, we definitely appreciate your patience. And we also want to say we're here for you. We are a resource for you. We're your partners. See us as a resource for you as best we can. Also understand that you know, so much is changing, and I know you all are living and breathing this as well as just like we are. And so even from one day to the next, some of our guidance might change. So again, the best way to keep posted on everything is in the FAQ document, which again is very frequently updated and regularly updated, both ours, and I'm sure I'm also speaking for TEA, I'm sure they update theirs regularly as well. And then if we get any specific information, like I said, we'll also communicate via the email addresses that you used in your registration for this webinar, along with posting it to the .gov listserv. So again, we appreciate how quickly everyone is responding to this new environment, and especially all that you're doing with your students and for your students. So thank you, and signing off for now.